Social Psychological Research and the Christian Faith. This is for BEH 333. So the Stanford Prison Experiment is a very well-known psychological experiment that took place in 1971. It was led by Philip Zimbardo. It took place at Stanford University. And what they essentially did is they went into the basement of Stanford University and they created a prison. They took 24 male college students and they randomly assigned them to being a guard or a prisoner. And the experiment was to take place over a 2-week period, and they were going to be looking at human behavior in a prison setting. Does the power of authority have any influence on how people in a power position act and those who are not in the power position react to those in a power position, different psychological effects. And anyway, so the prison was set up very much like a real prison. It was made to feel like a prison. The prisoners went through a delousing process. They were booked. Basically everything that would happen to, if you were really to be arrested and thrown into prison, they went through a very, very similar process to make sure that they set up for it accurately and to kind of create that feeling. The guards were given uniforms, police batons, and they were also given sunglasses to wear over their face to kind of help hide emotion and again to just really create that prison-like atmosphere. So the experiment actually ended after only 6 days. The simulation kind of became too real. A lot of psychological distress occurred to the prisoners, and it was kind of just deemed a little bit unethical. The prisoners were psychologically bullied and abused verbally. They were going through physical distress. So after only 6 days, the experiment came to a close. The researchers did not expect for results to happen so quickly. After the first day, prisoners were already beginning to rebel and act out against the guards, and things just kind of only escalated from there. So the participants really fell into their roles easily. Those who were chosen at random to be the guards really took on that power position, and some of them took on very strongly, and others, became like the nice guards, and some were the really tough, strict guards. And then there were those prisoners who were the leaders of rebellions and ones that kind of were trying to do good and just kind of skate by and have, minimal distress. So that's kind of an overview of the Stanford experiment. We can kind of look at immoral acts that are in the Bible and compare them with the Stanford prison experiment. If we look at Mark chapter 7, verses 20 through 23, it kind of gives us this detailed definition of what an immoral act is. So an immoral act can be evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. So all these things are evil, and they come from within, and they can defile a person. So this right here, kind of gives us that really good definition of what is an immoral act. It's not just murder and theft and the things that we think of. Obviously, it's being wicked, wicked of the heart, having a lot of pride, envy, and those other things. So obviously, an immoral act is an act of sin, and it is looked down upon at God, and it displeases Him. And the Bible is a great tool, and we'll see that later, that teaches us what immoral acts are and how we should act and not act. So an example from the Bible would be 2 Samuel chapter 11. We see King David, and he sees Bathsheba, and she's this beautiful woman, and he sees her bathing in a pool, and he, lusts after her, and he sends, his men to find out information. Who is she? Where is she from? And then he's actually told that she is the wife of Uriah, and Uriah is actually a general in David's army. But David, being King David and his power of authority, that doesn't matter to him. He wants her. He sees it. It's, his target. And he basically does whatever he can, and he commits adultery, and well, they both commit adultery, and she ends up becoming pregnant with King David's son. And, it wasn't just the fact that King David was lusting after her, which we know is immoral already, but he did commit that act of adultery. He used his power in the wrong way, and he saw what he wanted, and he went and he took it. And so then, still wanting Bathsheba, even after their first encounter and, finding out that she was pregnant, he actually sent her husband Uriah to the fiercest part of battle, and he had the troops pulled back, which ended up getting Uriah killed. So he essentially plotted to have him murdered. And so then David, is a murderer in that sense. And this displeases God greatly. And so we can see this story here that kind of shows us a story of immorality in the Bible on several aspects. Murder, adultery, wickedness, envious, jealous, all those kinds of things. So comparing and contrasting the experiment and the story of David. So we know that David commits that immoral act of murder and adultery, but he does this through the feeling of his power. He's king, and he wants what he wants, and he took it. And the guards in the experiment, they gain this power of authority, and they get used to it. And they basically become used to getting their way and what they want. They do this by having the prisoners do everything that they command, and they command correct behavior, and they have the prisoners do silly, relentless tasks like jumping jacks, push-ups, roll call, waking them up every hour. The prisoners don't know if it's daytime or nighttime, and they just kind of put them through this physical and mental abuse. And the guards just take their power, and they kind of go, well, I'm the guard and I'm in charge, and you have to do what I say. So we can kind of see, the guards, they bring on those immoral acts upon them, and, take it out on the prisoners. So the consequences of the experiment, what happened is the prisoners suffered psychologically. They had distress physically and mentally. There was a prisoner who refused to eat. That was an act of rebellion by him. We had some of the prisoners break down, and they requested to be removed from the experiment. But mostly, everybody that participated lost their sense of identity. The guards lost who they were, and the prisoners lost sight of who they were. They all got wrapped up in this experiment. The guards, kind of morphed themselves into being this guard, and not realizing that, oh, you know what, maybe I'm taking this too far, and maybe I shouldn't be this tough, and this is an experiment, and, what is that sense of right and wrong? What was too far? They kind of lost their moral compass, and what was right, what was wrong. And the prisoners, they lost sight of who they were. In fact, they actually had kind of a parole board hearing set up, and one prisoner was deemed to let go. He could leave as long as he refused to get his money, because they were all paid for this their time in this experiment. And he didn't even realize that, oh, well, I won't be given my money, and I can leave at any time. And he said, no, I can't leave, because the guards had all the other prisoners chanting, prisoner 819 is a bad prisoner, 819 is a bad prisoner. And it got to him mentally, and he said, no, I can't leave, because they think I'm a bad prisoner, and I have to go back and show them I'm a good prisoner, not even realizing that this was an experiment. He was free to leave any time. He would just forfeit his money. So that's kind of a example on how it just really affected the identities of both the guards and the prisoners. So how does this affect human behavior? We can definitely see what the power of authority has on the people who are given the authority, and then the people who are not given the authority. With the people who are given authority, we can easily see that the power corrupts them. They take advantage of it. They lose sight of who they are. They kind of, again, lose sight of that moral compass. What's good? What's bad? How far should I take this? How far should I not take this? And those who are not in the power position, we see them, and they just kind of lose themselves in just totally lose themselves to the point where they're just so distressed, so stressed mentally and physically, and they just really, really, it eats at them and they really lose sight of who they are. And it just really can show you that people of power, they need to be thoughtful and really realize that the decisions that they make has an effect on other people around them, and especially those who are not in a power position. And we can also see that our judgment gets impaired with temptation. The guards were tempted with the new power they have, push those boundaries, push those limits, and basically they got to make the prisoners do whatever they wanted. And just like David's judgment was impaired by the temptations of a beautiful woman, we can see it in the Bible there as well. Um, so let's look at the guide to morality. So we know that the Bible is truth and it's God's word. And in the Bible, as the example from the Bible verse earlier, we are given a very clear definition of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is evil, moral, immoral, just, unjust. We're given a very clear definition of that. And so we also have to remember that we are made in God's image. Therefore, we should strive to be Christ-like. We should strive to be like Jesus. We want to do the things that would make him proud and appease him and appease God. We don't want to be sinful. We don't want to be immoral. We want to be good because God created us, and God created us good and perfect, and we need to try to uphold ourselves to those standards. If things would have been different in the experiment, so if the guards and the prisoners would have had a more faith-based principles, would have anything changed? Part of me thinks that things would have been different, that perhaps the experiment could have actually gone on the whole 2 weeks because there wouldn't have been as much stress in the situation. And that maybe the guards might have shown more compassion, and maybe the prisoners might have found there's more strength, and they would have gotten that strength from God if they were in prayer, if they turned to God in their distressful times. And then there's part of me that thinks that the results would have stayed the same. We are sinful by nature, we are born sinners, and we do know that power does corrupt, and that power of authority can, misguide us and, affect our decisions. So I think it's kind of a 50-50 on that, on if things would have been different or not.